These are the highest paying remote jobs in tech and management according to ZDNet. And one of these jobs is actually pretty surprising, so make sure you stick around to the end of the video to figure out what it is. Now, as always with these article recap and summary videos, first I'm going to give a quick recap of the article and the information in there. Then I'm going to give my additional picks for what I think are some of the other really good high paying remote jobs right now. And then we're going to give an overall analysis of the article's advice and what you should be learning from and what lessons you can be learned and what to also be aware of. So let's dive into it. So first, let's give a quick recap of the article. And the article leads off by saying that according to ladders.com, right now, 18% of jobs being offered are fully remote. And 156,000 jobs right now on ladders.com are all paying more than $100,000 per year in base salary. And I don't think it's any surprise that developers, software engineers, and other highly technical roles will always be offering remote work because a lot of their jobs can be done fully remotely just as effectively as if they were in the office. So here are the top 10 remote paying jobs in tech and management in no particular order. Senior software engineer, account executive, enterprise account executive, product manager, senior product manager, DevOps engineer, data engineer, product marketing manager, and project managers. According to this article, the CEO of ladders.com believes that even after companies start to return to office this year in 2022, remote jobs will still remain to be available and even increase in the market. In 2020, before the COVID pandemic, only 4% of high-paying jobs were offered to be fully remote. Then, by the end of 2020, 9% of all high-paying jobs were offered to be fully remote. And the CEO of ladders.com believes that that percentage is going to continue to increase even today. Alright, so now let's talk about my picks for the highest paying remote jobs right now that were not covered in the ZDNet article. Now, in my opinion, all of the jobs that were covered in those top 10 from the article were jobs that people already knew were high paying to begin with, even before being offered remote. And a lot of these jobs can actually be done quite easily, fully remote, because they don't actually need to physically be in the office to be touching a product, packaging anything, or shipping or building anything. Everything is going to be done all on their computers. So these are my picks for the highest paying remote jobs based on industry trends, what I've been seeing in the market as a recruiter, and my data and analysis based on Glassdoor.com and Levels.fyi. The first high paying remote job that we need to talk about is accountants and corporate finance. Now, this has been a huge shift in the industry due to the overall COVID pandemic because almost traditionally, all accounting and finance roles required people to be in the office. They truly believed that these jobs could not be effectively done unless they were physically in the office working together and collaborating with their team. Accountants and corporate finance folks have to work pretty hard, typically around quarter end and month end close, and they believe that when you're putting in these long hours, it's much easier and more effective to all be physically together in the office so you can keep each other accountable while you're working long hours, but also so you can ask questions very easily and get answers right away from your teammates. But thanks to the COVID pandemic, we've been able to see that companies have had no trouble filing their financial reports and passing audits. So it's clear right now that accountants and corporate finance folks can actually be equally as effective working fully remote. The second remote high-paying job that I want to talk about are recruiting positions. Now, even pre-pandemic, a lot of recruiters were already working fully remote, especially if they were independent and worked for themselves as freelance recruiters or executive recruiters. Now, executive recruiters, even in-house, can make upwards of $100,000 or six figures very easily. And because this job can be done basically anywhere that you have internet connection and a cell phone and access to LinkedIn or GitHub, anyone and anywhere can be a fully remote and highly effective recruiter. And we just wrapped up an 8-week bootcamp where we helped people break into the recruiting field without any prior recruiting experience. And we are thinking about launching another bootcamp based on interest levels. So if you are interested in becoming a recruiter, which is a high-paying remote job that doesn't require any prior experience, drop a comment down below so we can see what the interest level would be and when we should be hosting another one of these bootcamps. Another high-paying remote job is UX designers. Now, traditionally, this job seemed to almost be required to always be in the office because you need to collaborate with your teammates, you need to bounce ideas off of each other, you need to be creative in a group setting, and sometimes you even need to physically touch the product so you know what you are designing. But again, the global pandemic has demonstrated that UX designers can still be equally as efficient and effective while working fully remote. This is especially true if they work on any type of software or cloud-based product. Anything that's not hardware or physical, a lot of these UX designers were equally as effective at home. But even if you do work on hardware or physical or tangible products, a lot of them were just shipped the products at home and then they were doing their designs from there. And the last job that I think right now, based on industry trends, I'm starting to see shift more towards remote work are hardware and silicon engineers. This may seem counterintuitive because since they are hardware based, they actually need to be in a lab or physically at the office touching a product or knowing what to do. But especially if you work on CPU design or GPU design or any part of the silicon, honestly, we've started to see an industry shift now where everyone is being equally as effective by working at home and collaborating that way. And you're going to start to see a lot of these jobs from top companies like Apple, AMD, Nvidia, and Google all offering remote positions, especially in silicon engineering. And this is going to be a super hot market right now, and a lot of their pay is being extremely competitive and has actually shifted up to equal all of that of software engineers, which traditionally used to be paid more than hardware or silicon engineers. But as all companies now look to integrate vertically and create their own hardware and silicon chips, this is a very rare and niche skill set because it does typically require some advanced degrees, but it is highly, highly lucrative and can now be done remotely. Alright, so let's analyze all of the advice in the article and let's break down what's useful and what you need to be aware of. So, right off the bat, we should talk about how software engineering roles and sales roles aren't really that surprising to be on a list of high-paying jobs, right? Everybody knows that if you're an account executive or you work in sales and you're able to exceed your quota or you make President's Club, you're typically making pretty good money, especially if you work in tech sales. And of course, software engineers are known to be paid pretty well, especially when you graduate right out of college, typically starting at 6 figures already. So while these jobs are not very surprising, I was actually surprised to see that project managers made the list for high-paying remote jobs. Not because I don't think they're high-paying jobs, but because I wasn't sure that project managers could be equally as effective while working from home. Typically, project managers need to physically be in the office because they're like the quarterbacks for their companies and their teams and their products. They need to be able to identify where the roadblocks are and talk to different teams and mitigate risk and make sure that everyone is all moving towards the same goal with a lot of communication and especially a lot of meetings. Project managers typically get the most amount of work done easily by being able to pop into people's offices or stop by their desks, ask questions, figure out what's blocking them or other teams, and then resolve it live right there. But I guess it does make sense that this job can now be done fully remote because a lot of their stakeholders that they're going to be working with are all also working from home. And so there's no advantage for them to be also in the office when no one else is there. So for all of the project managers and program managers watching this video, the good news is this trend may continue all throughout 2022 and beyond, where you may now be given more opportunities to work fully remote. Now, another really interesting point that, of course, I need to point out as a career transition coach is that almost all of the jobs that were listed in this video so far, with the exception of product managers and product marketing managers, can be relatively easily transitioned into without any prior experience. So if you are thinking about switching careers and want to get a high-paying remote job, almost all of these careers are going to be great options for you. For example, you can get a software engineering role after you were to complete a software engineering bootcamp. Similarly, if you wanted to break into sales, you could start as an SDR or sales development representative, which typically requires almost no prior sales experience because that's one of the entry-level roles. And then once you work your way up from an SDR role, the next promotion is typically an account executive, which is on this list. And of course, as I mentioned before, we had an 8-week bootcamp where we helped people break into recruiting without any prior recruiting experience. And I myself made this career transition. So I can tell you, based on my overall experience, of course, that becoming a recruiter without any prior knowledge and getting a high-paying job is definitely possible. To wrap up the analysis, I want to make one very important point, and that is that you should never, ever choose a job based on purely how much money that you can make. I'll say it again. You should never choose a job purely based on how much money you can make. Sure, in the beginning, it's going to feel great and you're going to love your job because you're making a 6-figure salary while working from the comfort of your own home. But trust me, over time, past the 2 to 3 year mark, you're going to start to really realize that this job is not that enjoyable for you. And in the long run, you would have made far more money doing a job that you actually enjoy, regardless of the money. And let me explain how that actually is going to work. If you're doing a job that you truly, truly love and enjoy, you're really honestly going to get consumed by it. You're going to almost be obsessed by your work. But in a good way, of course. And when you are so dedicated and you really love your work, you're going to be willing to work harder, work smarter, and spend more time on your job getting better, which means your career progression will be extremely quickly compared to those who are just doing a job for a paycheck. And as everybody starts to notice how good you are at your job and how hard you're willing to work, which again is going to be much easier for you because you like what you're doing, you will start to get promoted and rewarded for this. And then over time, your career will be extremely accelerated based on your passion. Alright, so I hope you found this video to be helpful and now you have some ideas for some high-paying remote jobs in 2022. Drop a comment below what other videos you would like to see, and please subscribe if you haven't already if you want free weekly career content and advice just like this. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.